Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Ericka, Sallee, speaker, self-help author, transformation success coach, and the owner of True Synergy. I help women to figure out what stands in the way of them being their best. And I love working with organizations who are ready to push past the status quo to create amazing, dynamic, healthy, productive organizations. So listen, today's topic is the continuation in a series that I'm calling What's in Your Way? And today I want to explore the question as to whether or not you are making yourself a priority. Now, I know that many of us wear multiple hats. We are wives, perhaps, mothers, friends, sisters, daughters. We're employers, employees. We do so many things for other people. And yet, there is the moment where we stop and realize that we're really not investing the time in ourselves that we should. And I know it's easy to slip into the mode of always doing for others. And then when we look up, we're like, oh my goodness, what have I done for myself lately? And so there's this conversation that we're having about gender roles, right? We know that women are typically seen as the nurturers and the caregivers. And while that is a role that has sort of been part of our societal norm for such a really long time, I do believe that it is time to explore that in a different way. And so when we think about this notion of making everyone else a priority and putting ourselves last, if at all, this is the time when we really want to look at that to say, is this the thing that is keeping me from exploring what I enjoy, that's keeping me from creating something amazing for myself? Yes, it's easy for me to make sure that everyone else is okay and that everyone else achieves their goals. But isn't it now time for me to start thinking about what that might look like for me? And let me tell you why it's important to start exploring this question, and now is that time. I do believe that if we don't stop to figure out how to make ourselves a priority, then a few things can happen. Number one, we can become frustrated. We can become resentful. At a point in time when we start looking at what we're doing for other people and we realize that we haven't really done anything for ourselves, then we can then become angry. And that anger can turn inward, and then we become unhealthy, or we can express the anger outwardly. And the only thing that we can attribute it to, or one of the things that we can attribute that to, is the fact that, oh my goodness, I'm burned out because I'm doing everything for everybody else and I haven't given myself the opportunity to begin making myself a priority. And I have to say, this conversation is near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. I'm grateful to be able to have one-on-one coaching conversations with many of my clients, all of whom happen to be women. And there's one factor that seems to rise to the surface no matter what it is that we're talking about, and that is self-care. No, I'm taking care of my spouse, I'm taking care of my children, I'm taking care of an elderly parent or relative, and I'm always on the go to do those things, and I've not made myself a priority. And so because of that, this conversation around self-care and wellness for oneself is really, really important. And so if we do not begin to make ourselves a priority, that is the barrier that keeps us from exploring what's available to us, that brings us joy, that brings us fulfillment, that makes us happy, that helps us to seek out a better us, right? So when we ignore that and we don't open that up for ourselves, then we're really giving or not giving ourselves the moments that we need in order to make ourselves that priority, which is absolutely essential. Because if we don't make ourselves a priority, then at some point in time, everything that we do for other people, we're going to begin to feel the stress and the strain of that. We might feel like we're in that rhythm and we can keep doing it now. But at some point, we've got to stop. And here are some of the things that I want to share with you in order to help you begin to focus on that, so that if this is you, that you can begin to move that barrier out of the way and say, you know, this is the day that I make myself a priority and feel pretty good about it. So here's what I want to share. So number one, how do you then begin to make yourself that priority? How do you then begin to put yourself at the top of the list? Here is one of the ways that you can do that, is to recognize that you are entitled to treat yourself well. And if you're watching this, I want you to take some notes and write this one down, that you are entitled. Now, I know sometimes we hear the conversation about people who are in our society who feel like they're just entitled to have certain things and be able to do certain things from a level of power, if that means to trample over other people's ability to do it. But this is a different kind of entitlement. You and I are absolutely entitled to treat ourselves well. I know that probably sounds a little bit strange because you're like, ooh, can I do that? Like, is that selfish? And what I would say to you is making yourself a priority is not selfish at all. As a matter of fact, it is absolutely, positively necessary for you and I to do that. And if you don't, then you will not be able to continue to do the things that you need to do for other people. I always say this, and that is, you have to fill your cup first. I know that many of us have either flown and we've heard this, or we've heard people talk about putting your oxygen mask on first. And I probably cannot say this enough, that when you are in crisis, if there's something happening, even before you get to a crisis moment, to put that oxygen mask on first, to be able to breathe for yourself before you can help somebody else to breathe for themselves. That's what that means. And so recognizing that, yes, you are entitled to take a moment for yourself. Yes, you are entitled to be able to take a moment, to be able to sit still. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because I know you're probably like, well, when will I have the opportunity to do that? Well, that brings me to the second way that you can make yourself a priority, and that is to know that it is absolutely, positively, unequivocally possible to carve out time for you. And I know you're like, really? It's possible for me to carve out time for myself? Well, what do you mean? I've got to run here, I've got to run there, I've got to do this, that, and another for everybody else. When will I find that opportunity? So let me help you to think about time in a different way. See, a lot of times we think about it like, oh gosh, if I make myself a priority, if I do something for myself, that means I need all of this time to do it. And the reality is that our making ourselves a priority comes in increments of time, and we can define what that looks like. So for instance, would you have time to take 30 seconds to just breathe in, breathe out, and repeat that over and over, just 30 seconds, right? I know that we're breathing because thankfully, if you're seeing this and I'm saying it to you, then that means we are alive and we're able to breathe. But really taking the opportunity to just breathe in and breathe out. That's making yourself a priority, because that helps you to slow down and it helps your mind to just take a pause. Would you have 30 seconds to do that? Or would you have 5 minutes? And I know this probably sounds crazy and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do it. But to just sit still and to just observe, to just not do anything, to just take 5 minutes to just be still. That's making yourself a priority. Because if you're taking 5 minutes to be still, that means that you're not doing something for someone else. Just 5 minutes. Or would you have 30 minutes to sit down and to enjoy a meal that you're actually taking the time to chew and to enjoy the flavors of the food and to be able to feel it going down and to visualize your body digesting the food and all of the nutrients going to the right places in your body? 30 minutes. You know, one of the things that I've had a habit of doing over the years, and I'm really trying to be intentional with changing this. Let me change the way I said that. I'm being intentional with how I do this. So if I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking, by the time, my son or if my daughter's at home, by the time they are sitting down to eat, I might be still cooking and making myself a plate, and I'm standing and eating it while I'm still cooking and asking them, do you guys want more? And I'm standing up and I'm still eating. But one of the ways that I'm learning to make myself a priority in that example is that I sit down. When they start eating, now listen, they're old enough to be able to make their own plates and do all that kind of stuff. But sometimes I like to fix their plate, because if I'm making something, I like to, plate it so it looks nice. And if they just throw the stuff on the plate, they might not make it look as nice as I want it to look. So sometimes I do it, but being intentional when that's done, that I sit down and I enjoy my food, that's making myself a priority. Or here's another way to make yourself a priority is to take that hour, go get that massage, go for that walk, take that day off. Or when you're making appointments for everybody else, be sure to make your appointments for your wellness check so that you make your health and well-being as much a priority as you do everyone else's. You see how that sounds when we think about, well, I don't have the time. When you start to break time down and you put small activities into the time factor, it really does help you to see how you can use time to make yourself a priority. So here's another one. Understand that you and I have to sit still. That's another example in the previous one where I said, do you have time to sit? But here's what that does. A lot of times we are so busy making other people the priority that we're running constantly, and we're going to this place and that place, and we're picking this up and we're dropping this off, and we're moving here and moving there, and we don't even understand how sitting still is a necessity for our well-being, how sitting still is a way of making ourselves just as important as everything else that's on the list. So when we begin to just stop and say, I'm going to give myself the moment to just be still, it's giving us the chance to slow things down, to just let our minds and our bodies rest from all of the constant movement and doing this and doing that and everything else for everybody else. Are you that person who everyone can rely on all the time? No, I'm not saying not to show up for people or not to be there to support others. But when we do it at the expense of ourselves, that becomes the barrier to our own well-being, mental, physical, spiritual. It causes us to be connected with everything else but lose connection with ourselves. So is making everybody else the priority, is that the barrier that you can identify with? Is that the thing that's really keeping you from honing in on what joy and happiness and healthiness and wholeness looks like, feels like, smells like for you? And if you say to yourself, well, yeah, I have been kind of putting myself last. I haven't even thought about how to take care of me. I haven't even thought about what it means to move me from the bottom to the top. And more importantly, I've been thinking that if I do that, then that's not right. It's selfish. I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't do that. Then I want you to take what you're hearing right now and use this as an opportunity, as a transformational moment. Because when we begin to break down those barriers, the things that are holding us back, the things that are keeping us from being the best version to ourselves, that's when we begin to say, oh, I'm embracing this true synergy of mine. I'm embracing a level of wellness and fulfillment, mind, body, and spirit. That's what it looks like. So if today you are the one who has been sacrificing yourself, if you are the one who has been feeling the stress, who have been feeling the frustration, you're still doing, you're still going, you're still being for everybody else, and you're doing it, but somewhere in there you might just be feeling that little tinge of, I'm getting tired of this, but not doing anything about it. Well, let this day, let this moment that you hear my voice be the moment when you say, oh, I'm going to start making myself a priority. Why? Because I deserve it. Why? Because I can carve out the time to do it, even if that means increments of 5 little minutes throughout the day. And why? Because I know that I have to sit still, I have to be still in order to replenish and nurture myself. And that's when I begin to make myself the priority. So there's one more conversation in this series, what's standing in your way. I'm going to be talking about mindset shifts next. Ooh, say that 10 times fast. Mindset shifts with an FTS at the end. So be sure to tune in for that conversation. That will be the final part of this series, but I'll continue to talk about these barriers that sometimes keep us from being that best version of ourselves, and you don't want to miss it. So I look forward to seeing you all again real soon. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, share it out to your friends, because I know that it's not just me or you who's feeling that some of these barriers can sometimes stand in our way. But if you are having conversations with friends or family, you want to make sure that you share this out with them. And do not forget to turn those notifications on, so when new content is uploaded on my channel, that you will absolutely be in the know. So until I see you again, take care and be well. Mwah.